There is a game that has changed me forever. Well, there's a few games that have done that, but this one's special. It managed to completely recontextualize my childhood and has forever colored the way I look at media. And I haven't even played it yet. Haven is a cooperative RPG announced in February of 2019. It released about a year and a half later, but again, that's not the point. The point is, for the first time in my then 20-year life, I understood. I understood what it was like to look at a piece of media, look at a character, and say, that's me. Oh, hi. I don't know if we've met. I'm Arklin, showing more skin with every video. How indecent. I am an Indian American, that is to say, an American of Indian descent. Not to be confused with American Indian, or more commonly, Native American. I was born in the US, and despite my parents' best efforts, only speak English. I am, for all intents and purposes, the whitest guy you've ever met with this skin tone. Which is why it meant a lot to me when Kay opened his mouth and sounded like this.
I was just gonna ask if you could switch off the light.
Just a guy with an American accent. And my skin tone. I'd always thought cries for more diversity in games were kind of overreacting. I'd never had trouble identifying with characters of all backgrounds, white, black, white, Asian, alien, white, or even white. I understood that it was important for other people, but didn't really understand why. Because what you really relate to, right, is who the character is, their ideals, struggles, ambitions, and in a lot of cases it seemed like race, physical appearance in general, had nothing to do with that. And to an extent, this stands. I can absolutely see myself in characters across both race and gender. But the effect here is, I guess I would say, equal and opposite. I obviously can't relate much to the character, having never played the game, but there was a different kind of immediate connection I hadn't thought about before. I'm really not sure how to explain it directly, so instead I'll take a detour and talk about Halloween! Halloween, favorite holiday of candy-obsessed children and media-obsessed children, of which I was both. I was a massive fan of both Star Wars and Power Rangers, and outside of a single year where I dressed as Link, those were the only two media franchises I ever took costumes from. Like any other child, I really wanted to be a Jedi. There was just one problem. None of them looked like me. Nearly every character was either an alien with anatomy too complicated for me to emulate, or white. The only dark-skinned character was Mace Windu, but I didn't really identify with a black character either. As such, my Star Wars costumes were invariably variants on Stormtroopers, an iconic character who shows no skin. And look, you might be tempted to say, dumbass kid, just wear a Jedi robe and poof, you're a Jedi. But I didn't want to be random background Jedi number 4. I wanted to be Anakin or Obi-Wan. I wanted to dress up as a recognizable character, and as a 6-year-old, I didn't see any way to do that. So I chose a different character that I wasn't worried my skin color would get in the way of. While Stormtroopers are nominally background characters, they have the same iconic recognizability as the main characters, so it was the only option I felt interested in. Obviously there was Vader, but after a few years of that costume, I wanted more variety. My decision to dress as a Power Ranger was similarly reasoned, because the suit covers my whole body, my skin color wouldn't get in the way of the costume. And I really shouldn't have to tell you that looking back on it, this is kind of a sad way for a kid to be choosing Halloween costumes. I didn't even realize this was something I was doing at the time. It took until finally seeing Haven, finally understanding what it's like to visually experience yourself in media, for me to understand why I felt the way I did as a kid. There's an unconscious aspect to diversity in media that may not mean a lot to you until you finally get to experience it for yourself, or because you get it as default. To elaborate on this, I want to respond to some of the more astute viewers among you who may be yelling, "You have an entire knockoff Hollywood dedicated to your culture, you shithead!" And I want to respond to that by saying, first of all, rude, and second of all, it kind of doesn't. For those out the know, Bollywood is the Indian equivalent of Hollywood, the capital of Hindi movies. Bollywood actually outputs more films each year than Hollywood, so you think if I wanted to see myself, I'd just tune in. But that doesn't work for a few reasons. The first is, this is not my culture. Okay, well, it is in some ways, but the heart of the problem is I am not Indian. I am Indian American. The distinction is surprisingly important. One of the major issues that makes it a little harder to elicit that immediate "he just like me" for a reaction is no one speaks like me. Which is kind of obvious, they're Hindi movies. I don't speak Hindi. That's not insurmountable, like I said earlier, but the other issue is they don't really reflect my cultural experience. Indian movies are thoroughly laced with Indian culture, especially in regards to family values. But I didn't grow up in a massive household or small village surrounded by relatives. I lived in a typical American nuclear household. I'm already so far detached from the characters emotionally that I can't see myself in them. While obviously Haven's characters are pretty detached from my circumstances too, their thematic elements are, as good fiction is wont to be, relatable. It's a game about keeping a relationship afloat through trouble. The only Hindi film that's connected with me in the same way is Three Idiots, which is fucking fantastic and a film anyone who's been to college will empathize strongly with, and probably anyone who's been to school at all. Anyway, what I'm saying is, unless Hindi films start to shift their entire cultural identity, they're not really a place for me to connect to characters in the way I've been missing. At the end of the day, they're Indian films made for Indians in India. The amount of media made by or for Indian Americans is vanishingly small. Oh, and I shouldn't leave it unstated, Bollywood actors are disproportionately light-skinned. India actually has commercials for skin whitening cream, so thanks, Britain. So when people say they want to see more diversity in media, maybe it's worth considering why people might feel like it's lacking in the first place, why they feel underrepresented enough to ask, instead of saying they're entitled. If you're white and you've had years and years of media made for and by people who look like you, this probably isn't something you're going to be able to fully understand. Not because you're not trying, just because it's something you have to go through to get. That's why sometimes when you see groups asking for something you think is trivial, it probably isn't actually trivial, you're just used to having it. So used to having it that you don't even realize there's something there you're taking for granted. And while representation is important, it doesn't just benefit the people being represented. Parasite is a distinctly Korean film, but resonated with audiences worldwide. Devotion is steeped in Taiwanese culture, but is immediately poignant to anyone who has seen family members succumb to cults or faith healers. Besides making people feel seen, diverse media begets diverse themes, presentation, storytelling. The Farewell reflects what it's like to handle an extended family better than any other film I've seen, and it wouldn't have been that way if it wasn't directed by Asian American Lulu Wang. Turning Red reflects the difficulties of growing up between two cultures and what that feels like during a very transformational period in a person's life, a story that could only be told by a second-generation immigrant. They're stories and perspectives that couldn't be told better than by the people who wrote them. Diverse media helps all of us. I'm not saying every piece of media should have a racial quota, but we should really hand the microphone to as many different voices as possible. Representation will come naturally from there. And maybe, in the future, there won't be any more kids who feel like they need to wear masks to hide their skin. Hey, post... my cat ears. Hey guys, post-video Arklin here. I thought the video would be too visually boring if I weren't wearing anything, so I got these cat ears. I hope you like them. I kind of limited the amount of myself that I showed on screen during the video, not because of any sort of shyness or whatever, but because I didn't memorize the script and I wanted to be looking at the camera while I was talking, and I really want this video out before Halloween, so I'm not going to spend the time to memorize it. Sorry. I have, and I say this every time, I have a lot of stuff half in various states of being complete, so I hope you'll stick around for it, especially people who are interested in more Dark Souls content, because I promise I have something that is at least a little bit about that coming soon. Thank you for watching. I've been Arklin. Have a good day.